The last that we know is that they boarded the ship for Virginia, and the headright system entailed that anybody who went to settle in Virginia as an emigrant would receive 50 acres of land. It is the person who paid the cost of the transportation who benefited from the 50 acres of land. So Robert and Isabel will not have paid their own transportation. It will have been paid either by Gilbert Livesey or one of the colonialists over in America, and it is they who will have benefited from the 50 acres.
My story sort of focuses on an enslaved person called Thomas Anson. It was 1758, and the reason we find out that he even was living in the northwest of England was that he escaped. He escaped the people, the family that owned him, and there was a reward put out for his return. He wasn't returned, he wasn't recaptured, and he next appears 2 years later in the 4th Dragoons in Scotland as a trumpeter for that battalion.
The image of Chinese men, particularly as a seaman, came to here and will be discriminated by, the surrounding people. You can imagine a single man married an English woman, maybe not comfortable walking out with her. It is the thing that we cannot find from the archive documentation. We can only use our own experience to imagine.
He petitioned the King of Sweden at the time, along with 53 other prominent Scandinavians, for funding for the church. And the church still stands in Liverpool today, and it's still used by the Scandinavian community. He had 3 of the Scandinavian consulates at his funeral. He was very good with charity work as well. He raised a lot during the war, during the First World War, for charity. And he received the Danish equivalent of an OBE.
I grew up knowing the basics of the story, that we were a refugee family and that my grandmother had to come to Britain in order to save her life. But researching it, I found a lot of detail that I didn't know before. I didn't know that she was taken in by some architects in London who sponsored her to be in Britain and gave her a job as a servant. I didn't know that she was called Sarah. At first I thought that was something I just didn't know, but then I found out that was actually a name that the Nazis gave her to identify her as Jewish.
Okay, everybody's heard of Van Gogh. It's a shame they haven't heard of Karol Klitsch, because he contributed so much, and he turned stories fortunes. They were selling their linoleum and their things all over the world. And they became very prosperous. Also, he carried on inventing. And so I want the history to be known. For example, how to make false ivory and to print on it. I mean, just so interesting.
He came from a royal family. He came to England as a Methodist ministry. He more interested in football, so he played for different teams in northern England. So he was part of the Preston North End team, the Invincible team. After he retired from football, he was a miner. He had a sad life. During his time, he experienced a lot of racial racism.
The tombstone is made in a very unique style called Totenmahl, which is a German word that basically just means death feast. And it typically shows the dead person at a banquet, lying back on a sofa, usually with wine somewhere. And I feel like if you're going to be remembered in this case for about 2,000 years and probably a lot longer, then that's a pretty good way of, showing yourself off.
he becomes the captain of slaving vessels that are leaving from Lancaster, going to Africa and picking up captured African men, women, and children. And he's the captain of the ship, sailing them to the Caribbean or the U.S. to sell the people into slavery. He becomes a merchant himself, makes a lot of profit in the slave trade, and then brings those profits back to Lancaster, setting up cotton mills in the Loon Valley, and invests in the Industrial Revolution here.
Following the Norman conquest of England in 1066, the monasteries based in France were keen to expand into England. So Ewan d'Avranches led a team of 12 monks from the abbey in Normandy to northwest England. They originally settled at Tulketh near Preston, based in a semi-ruined castle. After 3 years they moved further north to land owned by Stephen. They settled at a site on the outskirts of Barrow known as the Vale of Deadly Nightshade.
And he moved then to Holland, but he was somebody who got frustrated when things didn't particularly work efficiently or quickly enough. So along the way, he teamed up with various other scientists, and there's a particular process called the LeBlanc process, which was a much more clean and efficient way of producing this sulfuric acid. And he discovered that there was going to be a plant being built in Northwich. So he moved over here. They set up a plant in Winnington near Northwich, which became Brunamond.